Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this morning. We'll give everyone a few moments to filter in. For those who aren't aware of our position with ClearCom, we've been representing ClearCom since 2012. On the screen is a selection of some of our customers, ranging from global network systems, so extremely complex talkback solutions from frame to frame across the globe, solutions within the UK itself, so more national distributed, very complex, large wireless systems, and a lot of these customers are linked together between MCRs using ClearCom products. I've been representing ClearCom myself since 2009, having previously worked for ClearCom and now with Tyrell. And I remember back in 2009, there was quite a lot of pushback when ClearCom introduced its first IP panel connectivity. We had customers tell us that we were heathens, that it would never be considered. Roll on a few years, and we are now designing extremely complex, large AS67 networks, as well as wide area IP connectivity. So just proving that even talkback will eventually evolve to the new requirements of any broadcast workflow. We're really excited by what ClearCom have done here, both from a technical evolution, but also a commercial evolution as well. So I think without further ado, we'll hand over to my good friend Kari. Like I said, we'd like to take questions through the webinar, but please wait to the end, where Kari will be sharing links to for you to have trial licenses, but also we'll be continuing our Q&A section.
Many thanks, Dan.
Pleasure.
My name is Kari Eyþórsson, and I'm a product manager for ClearCom. ClearCom is a long-established organization and a provider of intercom solutions. ClearCom has been around for more than 55 years now. The roots of the organization really stem from the kind of, what should I say, the coming of age of live performance as we know it today. In the late 60s in San Francisco, which is our hometown kind of still, there was a lot of rock and roll shows going on. The Grateful Dead, The Doors, Janis Joplin, and all of these artists that we've come to love. They were starting tours. They needed bigger sound systems. They needed a bigger lighting rig. They were doing shows in bigger venues, louder and louder, and there was a need. There was a need for people to communicate, to effectively execute their performance with everything this entailed. So the mentality of ClearCom, which was to solve this communications problem, has really evolved since then. We started out with very simple systems that were deployed from the philosophy of using the parts that you have on a show site in a practical, easy-to-use manner. Of course, ever since, our environments have changed drastically. Coming from the 60s, where a 30-volt power supply was pretty much something you would step over at every turn, and the 3-pin XLR, we totally live in a different environment right now. And ever since the mid-2000s, I would like to say, ClearCom has worked on harvesting network technologies. At the start of it, let me see if my control works. Oh, there we go. At the start of it, as Dan mentioned, we started by adding panel connectivity over wide area and internet networks. This was done in a very effective way where the user pretty much only needed one IP address at their host intercom system. And you could now take your intercom key panel out into the field and connect it pretty much anywhere on the internet, and it would find its way home. This has been tremendously successful for us and our customers to such an extent that the basic principles of the architecture remain pretty much the same to this date. ClearCom then spent a considerable amount of effort on developing the world's first network mixing system, the IV core, which basically allows us to do distributed mixing. This effectively means that you have a system based around a central server, and then you have clients that connect to that. The clients, they can be an interface port, a line level input or an output to a system, or they could be one of our virtual intercom clients, such as our agent IC and station IC, which you can run on your personal device or computer. This then, coupled with today's tremendous development of cloud infrastructure, has really enabled us to build some cool tools that we are quite excited to be sharing with you and the marketplace this year, which is our GenIC virtual intercom system. I'm so sorry, but there is a little bit of a lag here on my screen control. Dan, can you advance for me? I think I seem to be shifting many slides at the same time. There you go. So we have developed the GenIC, our virtual intercom system, to solve the three main business problems. So one of them is the ability to provide a virtual intercom system without any hardware at all. Today, it is quite beneficial with all of the tools that you have in your current production arsenal to be able to quickly spin up the systems that you require for your production, be that your edit suites or whatever that may be. You can then now run this on your regular computer hardware. The same thing with GenIC you can now do for intercom or your talkback requirements. We don't need a dedicated piece of hardware unless you want to have one. GenIC is then also developed to be able to facilitate adding our virtual intercom clients in an easy way to your existing hardware system. So this is basically a hybrid deployment where the GenIC takes care of your internet connectivity, public IP addresses, and most of your port forwarding concerns. And then finally, something that has always required a bit of an overhead in system deployments is bridging intercom systems together. GenIC is designed to facilitate the ability to do that in an easy way on the internet. Next slide, Dan. So the components of GenIC that we, with the system as you see it, are basically the GenIC itself, which is a service that runs in the cloud on a ClearCom managed data centers. There are the virtual intercom clients, which are our agent IC for your Android or iOS devices, tablets or phones, as well as station IC, which run on your laptops or desktop computers, your Windows or Mac OS operating systems. Then finally, with our GenIC Premium, we have the ability to use our LQ interfaces, which are available in a variety of different sizes with 2-wire, 4-wire, and GPIO physical interfacing, as well as soft interfacing to SIP telephony and our ClearCom proprietary IVC connections. GenIC is sold in two different main packages. That is GenIC Essential, which allows you to use up to 12 channels of intercom to up to 24 users, and is sold in 1 month or 1 year increments. GenIC Essential is a virtual-only intercom system, while then the GenIC Premium can do more users, up to 64 per subscription, up to 24 channels, and can link to our LQ interfaces. Same thing, sold in 1 month or 1 year increments with automatic renewals. If you go to the next slide, please. Then you can see here clearly the differentiation. Basically, one is to do a fully 100% intercom deployment, while the other one is the intercom with full-on interfacing to your existing intercom system of whatever brand of intercom that may be. There is a lot of deployment flexibility in GenIC. GenIC uses a linking concept, which basically can take multiple GenICs and merge them together with linking to expand the number of users a system or a system deployment can have. If you look here, we have a fully maxed out GenIC system that is with 6 GenIC subscriptions linked together, all sharing their channels. You can see that here, each individual GenIC subscription has a different number of users as well as duration. So the first one has 16 users for 1 year, and so on. While the third one, for example, has an additional 32 users for 1 month. This means that for that next month, if we look at the lowest common denominator, the subscription that runs for 1 month, we have a total of 164 intercom users on 1 deployment for that period of 1 month. When the 1 month subscription goes out, the number of users goes down, of course, but the rest of it keeps happily working and keeps happily going on. So this basically creates a tremendous amount of flexibility where you can merge systems together, either for an increased capacity overall. We can do up to 384 users on a system using this linking architecture, or you can add for brief periods of time for certain surge capacity requirements. You can add additional amount of capacity that then goes away once it has been depleted. No longer need that capacity. Or you can simply split up your systems and provides some unique benefits as well for us in terms of how we deploy the system. Deploy the GenIC system around the world on 6 different geographical locations, be that in North or South America, in Europe, in 2 different locations, and in Asia. We can link together GenICs that are located in one of these deployment areas, which means that locally you can have the highest performance, latency performance for your users. And then once you link together, say a subscription that's running in Asia to another one that's running in South America, the penalty of the latency only happens to the conversations that need to happen between these 2 geographical regions. Here, the users in Asia, they're all having a very low packets delay to their data centers that's running their GenICs. Same thing is happening in South America. But when they talk from Asia to South America, of course, they get hit with the latency penalty. So this way, we can truly optimize the latency that the production team experiences.
Kari, is that something that users have to manage?
So yes, to an extent. Basically, in the Skyport administration portal, you can go and you can decide where you deploy your GenIC. You have a pick list of these 6 data centers around the world that you can deploy your GenIC in. and then you can link them together. But once that's up and running, it's running. Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we talked about the decentralized mixing. So this is a really cool architecture that we have been working with in various of our products through the years. And once we saw once we have started to make use of all of these tremendous tools that today's cloud providers have had to offer for us, it was obvious to us that our Ivy core was tremendously powerful for these kind of deployments, as it can run on standard data centers right now while we do let's say the heavy lifting or the magic of intercom in the clients that then connect together to the data center through the data centers. And that brings us to our demo. So the first thing that we see when we use GenIC is the Skyport Virtual Administration Portal. Sorry, that's a mouthful. But basically the Skyport manages all of our identities and credentials in the system. And it manages basically who has access to each GenIC that you need access to. So if I'm gonna share my screen for a second, you will see my screen open on the Skyport portal, and on the left-hand side and on the right-hand side, you can see my Station IC virtual intercom client. Right here, I'm looking at a workspace that I have been provided with. So in this instance, Dan provided me with an instance for me to manage. It is currently running. It is a GenIC Premium with 8 users. It's running in Europe, in the western part of Europe. And here I can actually stop the instance if I do not need it at the moment. This basically has the benefit of basically shutting down, powering down your intercom, if that is something that you need. But it also gives me access to the CCM, my configuration management of my GenIC subscription. Here you can see all of the GenICs that may be linked together to form a system. We can see specific configuration items about the linking of it. We can create roles which basically are applied to our different users with access to different channels and so on. We can see the different channels and we can name them. And of course, we can create our different users. So once I connect my virtual client, the Station IC, to the system, we can immediately see my 6 channels that I have on my system. I have an instantly available talk button, which is latchable, and I have individual level controls for each one of my channels. The keys that I see here are then configurable, as we saw here in my roles. I can decide which channels I get as a user, their names, and so on. Finally, we can see an overview of everybody that's connected to the system and where they're talking and what they're listening to in our channel view. Now, of course, when I go on vacation, I may need to give the system over to somebody else to manage for me. And for that, in the Skyport, it is now quite easy for us to give access to other users. So in my Tyrell workspace, I can now go in here and I can invite another user to become the system's either administrator. The administrator can basically give other people access to the system. But I can also give people access only to operate the GenIC and not invite others. So I have a really granular way of inviting people to the system here to work with the system. Finally, we have here a way to effectively invite your end users, that is your intercom users, to the system. Basically, the way that works is that when we pick here the endpoint user permission level, your user, who might be the, let's say, the graphics operator, gets an email, and the email gives them all the links to download whatever virtual intercom client is appropriate for them, agent IC or station IC, and basically allows them to log into the client. Once they log into the client, they get all of the information about the system that they've been invited to, and they simply need to hit the start button to connect to the system. A tremendously easy way to basically bring people onto the system that's going to be available to us very soon this summer. So that is basically kind of the high level of Gen IC.
One thing I'd like to pick up on there, Kari, whenever we're designing a comm system or a customer's evaluating a comm system, one of the considerations that people have is the ease of deployment, particularly the way IP allows us to deploy panels and remote endpoints really simply. One of the things I love that you've done with the Skyport is how the user can drive where their Gen IC instance lands, and the automation that kicks in that does that deployment without any intervention on our part. But then also the end user, because ultimately end users aren't technical all the time, so being able to bring end users into the system is really easy. I'll let you pick up there what you're showing on the screen.
Yeah, so you mentioned the ease of deploying things, where to deploy them, and so on. We definitely need to have the Gen IC stopped while it's being packaged and moved to a different place in the world. But once we have stopped it, we do get basically a drop-down list of all of the 6 different deployment sites that we have around the world. And by stopping the subscription, picking a new deployment target and starting it again, you can move your Gen IC within a couple of minutes around the world for its optimal deployment target.
Lovely. We will pick up for some Q&As. Let me just hand back, Kai, if you don't mind, back to the slide deck. So on this page, there are several pieces of information that might be of interest. One being my contact details, or Tyrell's contact details, and Kari's information. But more interesting, I suppose, is a QR code giving you a link to download a trial Gen IC license. If you miss it during the webinar presentation, then I will be sending out a recording of this webinar, so you can do it then. Couple of questions for you, Kari. Earlier on, you mentioned that Gen IC, if we have the premium license, can connect to an LQ. Are there any plans to expand that to support, because you're running off the IV core, is there plans to support the IVC32 or the IPA IP card?
Yeah, so this is definitely a first step for us, the Gen IC. This is our release number 1, and it's definitely not the last one. So yes, we see, let's say, for the future, we see intercom being something that we need to be able to deploy pretty much anywhere. Historically, intercom has been like the United Nations of audio. We've needed to be able to connect to all of the different formats of audio, 4-wire audio, be that MADI, Dante, AES67, 2110, whatever it may be. And we've needed to adapt our system so that they can live on the customer's infrastructure. Rarely do we have the luxury of dictating people's infrastructure. We need to basically adapt to the infrastructure. And to us, the cloud is an extension of that philosophy. So we certainly see GenIC evolving and being, getting more and more capabilities over the year, including the ones that you mentioned. Be that interfacing to other systems, tighter integration into our own or third party. We always need to connect to other audio peripherals, as an example. So yes, certainly all of those things are on our table to support that vision that we don't dictate the infrastructure or the business requirements. It's you, our customers.
I certainly know that panel connectivity is requested quite often as we've been introducing the product. There's some questions on security and latency, and I wonder, there are two different questions, and I wonder if it might be worth answering those together. So what is the security of the GenIC and the applications themselves, and the expected latency between users or regions?
Yeah, so my favorite audio answer on latency is it depends. Right. So, it's quite a bit of a matrix depending on, what your environment is. And leaving the tightly orchestrated hardware world where we control everything from A to Z and putting it onto virtual deployments, be that or your phone, adds quite a few variables into the picture. So like even just between different phones, Androids, iOS, and so on, it varies greatly. I will say though that, just to give some numbers as an order of magnitude, station IC running on a Mac OS can be, I think I'm saying this correctly, I don't have the numbers in front of me, in the 80 to 110 millisecond range. iOS devices, they need more latency. I want to say still below 200. And then, of course, are you running this locally, with a very good connection, or are you somewhere in the countryside on Clarkson's farm, using a sketchy cellular connection? It really just varies widely from that standpoint.
I must admit, for the audience, when we were beta testing GenIC on behalf of ClearCom and Kari first gave us our very first login, I was quite amazed from a nerdy perspective how good the latency was. I was expecting quite a gap, but the latency was very usable.
So you can try this yourself as well. So if you go and if you initiate a GenIC trial, or even if you just download one of our clients from the QR codes, they're actually aimed right now to a hardware-based system, but it should still give a good indication. And we do, on the hardware systems, we actually do a trick where we give you a loopback. So you can actually listen to a port and talk out of it. So you're hearing the worst case scenario of yourself back and forth, crossing continents. And most people are pleasantly surprised by what they hear. I will also say on the latency thing that, when we do a direct comparison to a comparable hardware hosted product, the difference between GenIC supporting our agent IC as an example, if it's deployed on a hardware or in a data center, is basically just a package delay, from you to the data center compared to a hardware hosted solution. And then on the security side, ClearCom, we take security very seriously. We understand that, there is a tremendous amount of trust that we need to both earn and maintain, on that front. So security has multiple different subtopics. One of it being basic access to the system. And so I showed you guys the Skyport. The Skyport has multiple different access levels, so you can really provide access to the things that matter on the system. And then, of course, the system utilizes encryption in its linking protocols and so on.
A couple of more questions for you. In fact, we've got a good number. So there's obviously, I've got to love comms. You know, it really kicks into people's technical interest. Question on licensing. One on, can you have less than a month, and pricing. So if you wouldn't mind answering the duration, can we do less than a month? And I'll cover the costs.
Not at this point. So right now the increments are 1 month and 1 year. In the future, we may explore doing different durations, and we're happy to have those conversations. I will say that we made an attempt to price things in a simple way, so that even though it's a 1 month and you need it for a week, you know, that it would work out. We were trying to make it simple with not too many options. But that's definitely something that we're ready to just learn over time. Of course, everybody's favorite phrase is that it's just software. So we're definitely willing to embrace, you know, what comes up as we embark on this journey.
Often when manufacturers make the migration to the cloud, they forget that there's a OpEx subscription desire from going to the cloud, and they move technically to the cloud, but carry a CapEx mindset across, and you've done really well on that. For those watching, 8 users for a month would be £102, 122 euros. For the premium license, 8 users for the month would be £176 or 208 euros. When I send out the recording of this webinar, I will put those details in an email for you. There are a lot of granular steps after that, but they're your 2 entry points. There is a question with regards IFB, Kai, if you're brave enough to answer. IFB in the cloud, how do the person asking is that via LQ?
Yeah, so I mean, we can interface to pretty much any audio device using LQ. The system does not feature interrupts at the moment, but that is high on our list for upcoming changes and enhancements to the system. So I expect that in the coming months we'll see IFB capability being added to GenIC.
Yeah, certainly within the software, there is no mix capability from a ducking perspective and IFB perspective.
Yeah.
What about multiple GenIC deployments being linked? Will they remember the temporal connections for future reuse? That's I'm not sure what temporal connections one is meaning, if that means anything to you. If not, we might have to come back to the audience on that.
Yeah, well, so the philosophy of the system is that there is always one leader in a system, and that leader basically maintains the database for the entire system. When you add another GenIC to that, it basically grabs whatever configuration is in the leader of the system and makes use of that. And that could be connectivity information for circuit on the LQ that you have on the system, or that could be, you know, your role information or your channel assignments, etc. So those are all there. If the link leader goes away for whatever reason, the system then all of its members keep on running until they get the leader again in place. So that's kind of the high-level philosophy, if that helps.
I think this question might be showing someone's bias on their favorite OS. Is the audio via an iOS device as reliable as normal telephony on the same phone?
So iOS, well, all of these OSs are kind of interesting, and it's they're somewhat of a moving target. Every year we get a new release, right? we are on the, if memory serves me correctly, we are at the priority level below a phone call. So our apps. So inside the OS, and these are slightly different between Android and iOS, there are priority levels. Like, so a phone call trumps it all. VoIP apps, which is our kind of classification for Agent ISC, I believe that I'm not saying anything correct. It's that's the level below that. And then your Spotify's and YouTube's and whatever are like way below that.
Okay, thank you. And the last question for now, unless any more come in, is can we trade existing static app licenses? So I imagine that being Agent IC licenses to cloud use for Gen IC.
We don't have a migration path, but we're happy to have a conversation on whatever your particular scenario looks like.
Yeah, I would definitely encourage. Unfortunately, it comes across as anonymous, so whoever did ask that, I do encourage contacting Kari and myself just to give us a little bit more detail about your requirements and your desires. Well, I think that's all the questions. On behalf of Tyrell, I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time out of their day. Kari, thank you again for taking time out to share your developments with us. You've done a great job, and we look forward to rolling this out for specific productions.
Many thanks. Thank you for having me, Dan.
Pleasure. Thank you, everybody. See you soon.